Room 12 in the emergency department. My patient is a 74-year-old woman who was brought in by medics after her neighbor found her unresponsive in her yard. While the team works, a man appears in the doorway. "I'm her son," he says, "but I can't tell you much. I haven't seen her in years." He doesn't know her medications. He barely knows her life anymore. But when he got the call, he showed up. Most of the time, when people come into the hospital sick, injured, dying, someone else gets called. A phone rings, a screen lights up, and an invisible agreement is activated. Who would show up for you if you were lying unconscious in a hospital bed somewhere right now? Most of us think we know, but after years in the emergency department, I can tell you that the person who walks through that door isn't always the one you expect. You see, the emergency department is a place where lives don't just arrive disrupted. It's also a place where relationships are tested. As a physician, I don't just see illness. I see who answers the phone, who knows the stories, who stays, and who doesn't. Sometimes it's the ex-spouse who swore they'd never speak again. Sometimes an old friend, a neighbor. And sometimes people arrive who instinctively stepped into a role they didn't realize they still, if ever, held. In those moments, the hidden architecture of our relationships becomes visible. The fine print of life's agreements is revealed. Now, we don't often think of our lives as being shaped by agreements, but they're everywhere. We live in a world where we are constantly being asked to click accept. Yeah, I just want this app. Let me sign the waiver, check the box for all the cookies. Online, we scroll past without even reading. But in real life, it's more subtle. It's the moment you say yes to a friendship, yes to a job, a community. It's the moment you step into a family role you didn't exactly apply for. Each of those yeses comes with additional paragraphs, unspoken expectations, and possibilities. When you form a relationship, you're not just agreeing to the highlight reel, you're agreeing to show up in ways that you can't yet predict. And whether you realize it or not, you're also agreeing to be supported in ways that you may not yet need. If you think about it, lots of times we enter into relationships for seemingly trivial or superficial reasons, and then later the full breadth of our early agreement is brought to light. Casual conversation with a girl who sat next to you in chemistry class becomes a conversation about chemotherapy and losing her hair when she's facing breast cancer 20 years later. When you met your fraternity brother in college, your initial agreement may have read something like this: party, flirt with girls. You may not have imagined that just decades later you'd be the pallbearer at his funeral. And our patient in room 12, who hadn't seen her son in a while, may not have thought that he'd be the one to show up as she took her final breaths. This is what the grand stages of life, like an emergency department, lay bare so clearly. In those rooms, titles fade, history gets compressed, and what remains is the bottom line: who feels responsible, who feels connected, and who believes, right or wrong, that this is theirs to carry. Because crisis has a way of stripping life down to its essential contracts. Over the years, I watched estranged siblings stand on opposite sides of a hospital bed, people who hadn't spoken in years, and find ways to make shared decisions, or suddenly realize that when parents are gone, they may be all that's left. And it's not just family. I've seen neighbors who had exchanged nothing more than polite waves become medical historians and advocates. Teachers hold the hands of their students whose parents were hours away. Friends sitting dutifully and exhausted because somewhere deep down an agreement exists. I recall a man who came in after collapsing at work. He lived alone, no partner, no nearby family. And we searched his chart for an emergency contact. And before we could reach anyone, His coworker arrived, still in her uniform, hairnet still in place. She didn't know his medical history. She held no legal authority, but she knew how he took his coffee and the music he played during cleanup and the names of each one of his kids, even though they lived states away. She stayed for hours. No one had formally assigned her that role, but somewhere between shared shifts and weekday overtime, an agreement had formed. If something happened to you tonight, do you know who would make decisions for you on your behalf? What if that person wasn't around or didn't answer? Do you know who may have you in mind as their emergency contact? Now, I'm not just referring to the paperwork or official titles. Longtime partners may not be next of kin, but are still next to skin. A person may not have power of attorney, but there is a power just being next to the gurney. I'm talking about pacts that may someday need to be acted upon, bonds that become much larger when an unexpected moment suddenly arrives. Now, sometimes our liaisons reveal themselves with a little more surprise. I once had a patient whose wife arrived first, clearly devoted, clearly in charge. And then a short while later, another woman appeared in the doorway. "I'm his wife," she said. Surprise! Another time, a woman came in critically ill, and within an hour, 3 men arrived. Each one introduced himself as her ex-husband. Then, without drama, without debate, they pulled up chairs and sat together. No one was confused about the past. They were clear on the attachments that mattered now. Not their chapter that ended, not the story they told themselves later, but the one still very much in force. Shift after shift, I've watched people walk into those rooms, people who could have stayed home, and choose to sit beside someone who once loved them, once depended on them, or once hurt them. Why? Because at some point they honored the fine print. You see, crisis can reveal our hidden agreements, but they are written in ordinary moments, in borrowed tools and shared driveways, and favors done without keeping score, and thinking of you texts and birthday shout-outs, and showing up when it was inconvenient but not yet catastrophic. These aren't dramatic declarations. No one's announcing these. But each one of these moments adds a line to the contract. We are all walking around with invisible agreements linking us to one another. Some intentional, some inherited, some we didn't realize we were still honoring. And one day, perhaps unexpectedly, someone will be called to honor yours. Or you'll be called to honor theirs. So take these 2 things with you. First, our relationships often have far more breadth than we realize, built in mundane moments and revealed in crisis. And second, while those relationships carry obligations, they also carry support for ourselves too. When you said yes to that friendship, that job, that community, you not only agreed to show up for others, you allowed the possibility of others showing up for you. Like an insurance policy you didn't know you had. Even when the relationship is complicated, even when the story is messy, even when you don't think anyone will come. When we uncover the hidden agreements that exist between us, we begin to see the true depth of our connections, and we start living differently. We engage with more intention. We choose our yeses more carefully, knowing that they matter. And we take our commitments more seriously, not as burdens, but as forms of belonging. And just as important, we avail ourselves of the support that's been forming around us, holding us together all along. So the next time you click accept in life, pause. Acknowledge the fine print that's being written. on a random Saturday when everything feels ordinary. And don't fear the responsibility, honor it. Because hidden in those agreements are the people who may need you to show up at their bedside someday. And those who will carry you when you can't carry yourself. Let it be a reminder, not just of what you owe, but of the commitments and connections that give our lives meaning. Thank you.